G'day guys, Mac with the Circle. Sorry I've been light on videos this week. I've been starting work really early in the morning and finishing, well, not super late at night, but I've been very tired and out of it by the time I've got home. So, life does tend to get in the way, so it's probably a good thing I don't do this full time. Now, today's episode is You and Your Dreadnought, a guide to 30k Dreadnoughts. So, we're going to be covering Contemptors, Deredeos, Leviathans, Cortis Contemptors, and Box Dreads. So, let's begin. The model you're looking at on screen, of course, is the World Eaters Legion Contemptor Dreadnought. Now, any Contemptor Dreadnought would do here. I just have to admit, this is my favourite one. The Alpha Legion one, very close second. So, yeah, I don't know, just had to put it up there because I think it's a beautiful Dreadnought, just minimalist in design, but looks beautiful. So, anyway, Contemptors. They come in two different varieties, your regular kind and your Mortis. Now, your Mortis gets bonuses to shooting at flyers, that kind of thing, if you don't move. Good, solid unit for shooting, especially at aircraft. But the regular Contemptors, they have access to a lot more war gear options, as well as the whole can actually fight in close combat thing with some efficiency. So you generally see a lot more regular Contemptors in play than you do Mortis Dreads. Now, that's not to say the Mortis Dreadnoughts are bad at all. They're not. They're actually really good. With the right weapons on them, they can actually be very, very strong. The ability to Skyfire means that if you've got Kiri's Assault Cannons, which are 6 shots each, you'll be hitting on 2s, because you're a Ballistic Skill 5 unit, and rending on 6s, and they're Strength 6 base. 12 shots on your Dreadnought, pretty good odds you're going to get a few hits in there. Considering most flyers hover between the 10 and 12 armor value, you will wreck things. You will wreck things. On the other hand, you don't necessarily have to shoot at flyers. You've got other weapon options, and we'll go into those in a moment. So, Contemptor Dreadnought, why do people take it? First of all, 5+ invul save. Very handy thing. Adamantic shielding. You get a 5+ and you get a 6+ depending if you're getting shot at or if you're in close combat. Also, Dreadnoughts have Fleet, which is pretty handy, you can imagine, because you get to reroll charge distances, and if you're running with the Dreadnought, which is often a choice people will make with a close combat Dread, then you get to reroll your run distances. So, good options. On top of this, unlike the Box Dreadnoughts, these things will not die to Marines in close combat unless they're armed with something pretty tough. A Power Fist Marine Sergeant really struggles because you just don't have enough attacks to try and beat that armor 13. Melter Bombs are about your only nemesis. And even then, you're a higher weapon skill, so it's even harder for them to hit you. So armor 13 is just a godsend because unless you're immobilized, they're going to be striking at that facing. This is pretty interesting because when you're in combat against other Dreadnoughts, if they don't have a Dreadnought close combat weapon, they actually can really struggle to hurt you. So that's another sort of unforeseen side effect. That's why these things get taken. They've got better stats than a Box Dreadnought. They're not that much more expensive, realistically. They've got the better armor. They've got that craptacular invulnerable, but it's still an invulnerable. They've got a great variety of weapons loadouts, and yeah, the better stat line. So, good all-round unit. Weapons-wise, there's Contemptor Chain Fist, Combat Arm, which is just a regular Dreadnought close combat weapon. Now, it's important to note, between these two weapons, the Chain Fist and the regular Combat Arm, they actually have a choice of different weapons that you can mount into the fists. So, for example, you put in a twin-linked bolt gun, a heavy flamer, plasma blast gun, a graviton gun. Very popular choice. The graviton gun in a twin fist Dreadnought gives you 2 small templates with a range of 24 inches, I believe, which have haywire. So, if you're fighting against other vehicles, Dreadnoughts, that kind of thing, you can fire a couple of those off, try and cause a few hull points damage before you charge in. Or if you see like a big horde of infantry coming at you that you really can't be stuffed dealing with, maybe fire those at them to create a little bit of difficult terrain and slow them down a little. It gives you options, which is very important. Now, why have I chosen to show the combat weapons first? Well, It's because I believe when it comes to Contemptors, there's two ways to run them, and only two ways. All for combat or all for shooting. If you try and do one arm for combat, one arm for shooting, you just end up with a shit Dreadnought. I'm not going to mix words here. You're shit because you can't deal with either thing effectively. Like, if you're going to be throwing a Dreadnought into close combat, you don't want to be striking with just 3 or 4 attacks. You want to be striking with 5 attacks. You want to make sure that whatever you hit dies. If you're getting hit damage on the way to combat and you lose that arm, you're screwed. Same thing with shooting. If you're going to be shooting, what's the point of having one twin-linked las cannon? Do you really think that one las cannon shot your Dreadnought puts out in the game is really going to be that effective? No, of course not. It's going to be terrible. So don't bother with the single twin-linked las cannon. Go for another fist, or put 2 twin-linked las cannons on him and go for a Mortis Dreadnought, and then get Ballistic Skill 5 twin-linked Skyfire to really mess up aircraft. So, the Contemptor Cyclone Missile Launcher doesn't count as a Cyclone Missile Launcher in the Heresy. What it does count as is a Havoc Missile Launcher. Now, the Havoc Missile Launcher, that is an interesting weapon for some Dreadnoughts to wield. Specifically the Thousand Suns Dreadnoughts, because they have a big crest that comes up on their sarcophagus. The bunny ears, famous Thousand Suns bunny ears. Very similar to the Khorne Berserkers in 40k, of course. We've got this big Nemes headrest. Yeah, these missiles sit right behind it, so if you put on a Thousand Suns Dreadnought, he's going to blow his own head off, essentially. Bit silly. Having Missile Launcher, good area denial weapon, good against cults, hordes, that kind of thing. So if you see like a 20 model or more militia blob moving towards your Dreadnought, good weapon to soften them up a bit. Other than that, pretty situational. You're not going to kill a lot of models with it, but they're not super expensive as an upgrade, so maybe worth looking into. Contemptors also have access to the Conversion Beamer. It's actually a heavy Conversion Beamer. It's a weapon I think could be good, but I don't know. The only time I've got Conversion Beamers to work is on a Master of the Forge with a Rad Missile Servitor unit, which is a brutal unit. But that's a whole unit working in sync with one another. This thing, with firing calibration and such, it's not good at all on a Dreadnought. Especially because your Dreadnoughts are usually designed to get in close, and Heresy has a lot of units that will get in close. So having a weapon that gets weaker the closer the enemy gets is a bit of a struggle. If you go into a game and you come against, say, a drop pod army, and they just pod a heap of their forces into your base in turn 1, you've basically got a strength 6 small blast. It's pretty useless at that point. It's really only good if you're Dreadnought. You can comfortably say that, hey, every game I'm going to be able to sit my Dreadnought at 60 inches from the enemy and just pop small blasts that do, strength 10. It's too situational. Don't recommend using it, guys. Alright, the Contemptor Pattern Volkite Calverin. This thing, on the other hand, boy do I recommend it. It is a brilliant weapon, because unlike the previous weapon, this thing actually does work at all times. So, here you have a Strength 6 weapon that's AP 5, not AP 4. There's a bit of a downside, it can't kill Solar Auxiliary effectively, but it also has Deathlock Rate. This thing is insanely good against units from the militia. So I run 2,000 Suns Contemptors when I feel like it, with 2 of these each. That gives me 8 Ballistic Skill 5 shots per turn, and yeah, pretty good at cutting down a lot of units fast. Even better, it's twin linked, so strong to say the least. Very good against hordes. Against Marines, a bit mediocre, but you can use it to take down rhinos, that kind of thing. It's a good way to get first blood. The sustained fire output can do a lot of damage to Marine units over time, so all round, very solid weapon choice. Not strong enough though to kill vehicles reliably, and the AP isn't low enough to reliably kill infantry. But against horde armies like militia, oh, this thing's a godsend. Alright, the Contemptor Heavy Bolter. Very good for some. Dark Angels, I think, can take nucleic acid rounds in this. If they can, I'd have to double check it because I'm not super familiar with Dark Angels rules. But if they can, that is a brutal unit. But otherwise, it's a very weak weapon for a Dreadnought. The only good side to it is it's cheap. Realistically, I would just avoid it. The Volkite Calvarian does everything this does better. More shots, higher strength, and slightly worse AP, but it makes up for it with the Deathloop rate, and it has better range. Contemptor Twin-Linked Autocannon, very good weapon. Usually the go-to weapon of choice for people who want to kit out a Mortis Dreadnought for shooting at aircraft. So, 2 Twin-Linked Autocannons, yeah, 4 shots, strength 7, Twin-Linked, you do the math. It's pretty strong at killing light armor like Rhinos, that kind of thing. Can't hurt the heavier stuff like Spartans, but then again, not much can. Even Las Cannons sort of struggle in that department. But very effective at shredding flyers and other light armor that may be floating around the battlefield, like Sentinels, Aurochs transports, that kind of thing. It's a good weapon. It's a good weapon. Sort of has fallen out of favour with me because of the Volkite Calvarian, which I think compares very favourably with it. If it had an extra shot, if autocannons were like 3 shots each, I'd go for them all the time, but unfortunately they're not. The Kiri's Assault Cannon. Now here's a weapon that pretty much everyone has used at some point on their Dreadnought. It's pretty amazing, not gonna lie. So 6 shots, AP 4, with rending, yeah, just solid. Short ranged, bit of a downside, 24 inches, but aircraft, that kind of thing, pretty easy to get within range of aircraft because they move so fast and so far across the table, and generally aircraft are pretty big models, so you can usually draw a line of sight to some point on them and then just unleash 12 barrels of hell. So yeah, good weapon. Contemptor Pattern Multi-Melter, useless. Okay, so here's the thing, I love melter weapons. Heresy's full of armored ceramite units. A lot of the stuff that your Dreadnought can kill with multi-melters, you may as well just kill them with your fists on your Dreadnought. You may as well kit out your Dreadnought for close combat. You're going to get a better deal out of it, because if you give your Dreadnought 1 or even 2 of these, basically you're just giving it 2 strength 8 shots. A lot of the time you won't get the twin-linked ability, or sorry, the 2d6 armor pen, because of the fact that, hey, it's on a armored ceramite covered battlefield, so very ineffective when it comes to that. A bit of a shame because it is a pretty cool weapon. It just needs more shots, frankly. It's a pretty meh weapon. Honestly, if you really want to take Melter, just take 2 fists and put Melter guns in your Dreadnought's fists, or if you're Blood Angels, play out Assault Cannons, because why not? Contemptor Pattern Plasma Cannon. Pretty solid choice, but you can't take 2 of them on your Contemptor. So, can't give it the thumbs up, because I don't think it's enough on its own. The other arm on your Dreadnought is gonna be a fist, generally. And what did I say earlier? Don't try and do both jobs. Just do one job well. No one I know who has a Dreadnought armed with a shooting weapon and a combat weapon, like one on each arm, does particularly well with them. Whereas I find that Dreadnoughts that specialise in a certain role usually do really well. But that might be just personal bias creeping in. Now, on that last point, something to point out. 2 legions, the Thousand Suns and the Word Bearers, have their own Contemptor Dreadnoughts, so I'll quickly cover off on those now. Thousand Suns have the Assyrion pattern. Essentially, this is a Mastery Level 1 Psyker Dreadnought, and instead of a Dreadnought Close Combat weapon as you know it, it actually gets a Dreadnought Close Combat Force weapon. You have to keep it, you can't change it out for something else. Now, a Thousand Suns Divination Dreadnought with 2 shooting weapons would be fantastic. Not what we got. Probably for balance reasons, you know, it would be pretty overpowered in the wrong hands. This one is shown with the twin autocannon. Again, do 2 strength 7 shots a turn. Really scream worth it to you? They don't to me. So if I was going to take an Assyrion, which funny enough, I don't have one in my 1000 Suns, even at like 8,500 points, I don't have one. I would take a Chain Fist. So if I do bump into a vehicle or a fortification that I really want to kill, I'm guaranteed the kill pretty much. Because just relying on your Strength 10 Force weapon, especially if you get a weapon destroyed and you lose that arm, that could be carnage. So, personal bias creeping in here, but I do think that going for a Chain Fist on the other arm as opposed to the Force weapon and gun is the better option. Now, Amerigo Tainted Dreadnought. This is a very weird unit because it's crap. Now, in Zone Mortalis it's alright, but generally in the game it's pretty crap. It's really good at moving through cover, moving around a dense terrain-filled table, that kind of thing. Has the Demon special rule, and you think, oh, 5+ constant invul, that's pretty solid. It doesn't really work that way, though. It's just as weak as a regular Contemptor. It does have It Will Not Die, but let's be honest, Primarchs have It Will Not Die, lots of tanks have it with, like, Blessed Order Simulacra, something like that. I can never get that word, because it's a big tongue twister. Say it 5 times fast if you can. Simulacra. It's just one of those units that's a bit poo. The only weapon that's ranged that you want to give it is the Plasma Cannon arm. And again, it's not a traditional Plasma Cannon, it's like a 3-shot, strength 8, doesn't get hot dearly. It's a Ballistic Skill 3 unit because it's a demon. So it's got a lot of the downsides and not many upsides for Contemptor. Frankly, it's a curse more than a blessing. If you're a Word Bearers player, you don't want to get your Psychers or your other demon units near it because they take a Strength 5 AP2 hit if they get near this thing. So yeah, bad news. It's worse for your own army than the enemy. So I can't recommend the unit in my right mind. In Zone Mortalis is kind of alright because the area effects can be pretty handy in narrow corridors, but this thing costs almost as much as 2 Mortis Contemptors, and it's nowhere near as survivable. Yeah, it's pretty crap. So can't recommend it, but it is out there, and yeah, I have to add it as part of Know Your Dreadnought. Alright, moving on, the Dreadnought Dreadnought. So the Dreadnought is your heavy support Dreadnought option in the firepower category. So whilst the Leviathan Dreadnought, which we'll get to soon, is sort of like a combat monster, really tough, hard to kill, this thing's more of a, I want to shoot down your aircraft, I want to pop tanks at distance, I want to generally harass your units, and it's quite good at it. It also has an option which I can't preview because they haven't released it yet. They previewed it months and months ago at Forge, and that's the Adamantic Pavés. Now, what's an Adamantic Pavés, you're asking? Well, it's a big block that's like a void shield generator, and it goes up on top of the Dreadnought, replacing that big missile launch you're looking at. It gives +1 invulnerable save to a maximum of 3+ to any units on your side within that aura. And it's a pretty small aura, but hey, you can get 3+ Cataphractii Terminators in a lot of different armies. You can generally buff units, which is pretty cool. Doesn't affect vehicles, that kind of thing. It's just infantry, but it's positive. It's definitely a positive. And I think it's a 5+ invul if you don't have one. So yeah, solid choice. Anyway, the chest is deceptive. It looks like it's 2 heavy bolters. No, it's 1 twin-linked one, which means you can't change it out for a lot of options that replace equipment, because a lot of the options that replace equipment say you may replace a heavy bolter or a heavy flamer with an assault cannon, for example. Well, this isn't technically a heavy bolter, it's a twin-linked heavy bolter. So yeah, another downside, that twin-linked heavy bolter, the nipple guns, yeah, that doesn't get Skyfire. So, and even if it did, it's not a very strong weapon for shooting at flies. Instead, it's all about the arms and the back-mounted missile launcher. So, arms. We have 3 different options currently. The Anvilus autocannons, which are a high strength, moderate AP weapon. They're not going to kill power armor very effectively, but they will kill rhinos, and they will shred things like Solar Auxilia. Do damage to Charonite Ogrins, that sort of thing. Generally, I say the go-to weapon for the Dreadnought. Long range weapon, they can sit back at a distance, and when you're pumping out a lot of shots at flyers with strength 8, you can do damage. Strength 7 is sort of the bane of my existence when it comes to anti-air in Horus Heresy. So many units have strength 7 anti-air, and it is terrible because they just can't hurt the armor 12 flyers. I mean, that you're trying to hit them, and then you're trying to roll like the 5s and 6s just to glance, let alone pen. It's no. Strength 8, that's where you're at, because that's on the 4 up you're getting the glance, and that's a 50-50 split. That starts getting into favourable odds. So Anvilus autocannons, definitely a solid choice. Of course, on the back, the Aioli missile launcher, as in garlic aioli. It's a bit of a joke. Anyway, 60-inch range, 3 shots, strength 6, AP 3, can shoot a different target to what the rest of the Dreadnought's weapons have shot at, which is pretty cool. And if it hits a vehicle, it always hits it on the side armor facing. So pretty neat weapon, good for shooting around corners at units. They don't get like hull down, that kind of thing. Very effective weapon. Only downside is, yeah, it's only 3 shots. A lot of flyers again. Armor 10 for the very light ones, but armor 12 on things like your Storm Eagles, Storm Birds. Geez, you're not going to take down one of those with this when it's 6s to glance. So, yeah, not great. Oh, did I mention it has Sunder on those autocannons? Alright, another weapon option, the Hellfire Plasma Carronade. So, this gives you either 4 shots, twin linked plasma, I think 24 inches range, you know, a good amount of anti-infantry. Or you can combine all those shots together in a big Kamehameha wave and just try and dump a large blast on someone. 2 firing modes, which is pretty neat. Not really a common weapon, it relies on the Dreadnought getting just too close, and frankly, there's other units that are better at that job, such as the Leviathan Dreadnought. If you want to get your Dreadnought within charge distance, essentially, of the enemy, you don't do it with the Dreadnought. It can literally only kick at things. It's not the most survivable of Dreadnoughts, and it's quite big. That's on an 80mm base, so a regular Contemptor, similar sort of height to the top of the torso, but much narrower and able to get into tighter spaces. The only sort of use I could see for this is with the Adamantic Paves and sort of rolling it up behind like units of Terminators, that kind of thing, or behind big tactical or veteran squads, and sort of lending that AP2 firepower to them to counter the other alpha units in other armies, as well as the invul save. But that's literally all I can think of for that combination. Not very common at all, but looks cool as hell, right? Those are some of the coolest looking plasma weapons ever invented for this game. And lastly, the Arachnus Heavy Las Cannon Battery. So 2 single shot las cannons, but very long range and yeah, high strength las cannons. This thing just glances at flyers and they explode. So if you think you're going into a fly heavy meta, it's the choice to go for. And even then, they don't bring a flyer to the game, they'll probably bring something like a Spartan. This thing will punch through the front of a flare shield of a Spartan. Very high accuracy, because thanks to its high ballistic skill. High ballistic skill unit, as I was saying, and yeah, very long range weapon. So, common tactic is to put one of these up high on a building, pick out an enemy vehicle, and just go to town with the las cannons, and then fire the missile launcher at like an infantry unit off to the side. Try and get a few cheap power armor kills in there, maybe force a morale check. So that's the Dreadnought, the support Dreadnought, useless in close combat, and yeah, limited options for what you can do with it. About the only thing I think you can do with the torso weapons is change them to heavy flamers, or give them shred rounds if you're an Iron Warriors player. Alright, the Leviathan Dreadnought. This is a unit I still think is probably too expensive for what it does. You could get 2 other Dreadnoughts, that is Contempt pattern of course, for the price of one of these. And yep, 4 hull points, it's got a lot of armor, it's a monster in close combat, absolutely terrifying, but it's a lot of points. It's a lot of points. Fully upgraded, if you go for gun weapons instead of just going for the fists, you're approaching knight sort of levels of points. And this thing, well, could kill a knight with a good charge, but it's not a knight. It's not a super heavy. It's just a regular walker, and glances will kill it. Haywire will definitely kill it. Yeah, look, it's a hard one to say worth it to, but it's a pretty cool unit. So, quick look at this thing. As you know, very high armor. In the center of the Dreadnought up the top is a Phosphex Discharger. Pretty cool weapon, very low AP, Flesh Bane, that kind of thing. Only downside, short range and 1 use only, which is criminal. I think it should be a 3 use only, or just let them use it the whole game. There's not going to be that many times you're firing a weapon at 12 inches range. On the chest, of course, you can take Heavy Flamers or Twin-Linked Volkites. Now, they're not the good Volkites, they're not Culverians, so don't have as much firepower. They don't really have the high strength of 6 and high AP. Instead, you get the strength 5 kind. So they're good. They're a good weapon. The Phosphex Discharger, though, is the one that's going to get you the kills. So at that short range. In the fists, of course, you can take melter guns. So very solid. Now, when it comes to weapons, of course, we have the fists. So the Siege Core is the first one. Nasty weapon because each unsaved wound does D3 wounds. Yeah. Couple of these and you can chop down a Primarch real fast. And being very high armor value, they're very, very unlikely to hurt you back. So, solid weapon. The other combat weapon is the Siege Drill, which basically lets you wreck vehicles and buildings. Of course, the natural combination here is one of each. Why wouldn't you? It's the best option. It's also the cheapest way to kit out your Leviathan Dreadnought. Go for the core if you're going in infantry, so you can just churn them up, cause the extra wounds. If you think you're going to fight another vehicle, you choose the fist. I cast fist. Simple. Pretty much covers all your bases. If you're loading up your Dreadnought with other things, you're doing it wrong. Now, some people would swear by gun-armed Leviathans. I'm not one of those people because, frankly, I like to invest my points wisely, and the Leviathan is notorious for terribly short-ranged weapons without enough shots. Such as the Leviathan Storm Cannon, which is brilliant at killing power armor, but you're doing it sub 24, which is not ideal. Also, this is a very expensive weapon. And unlike the Contempt Dreadnoughts, if you're going to take it, you might as well take 2 and just commit to going down that road of, I'm going to put all the firepower in your direction at once. I can't really say it's a great weapon though, because, well, other units can do it better. I mean, a couple of Contemptors, Mortis pattern with Volkite Culverians for the same sort of points, yeah, they won't be AP 3, but they'll put out a lot more firepower. Or perhaps look at something like Assault Cannons, Kiri's Assault Cannons on regular Contemptors. Another solid option. The thing with the Leviathan is that if you're killing power armor, that's great. You go against Custodes, it's not going to hurt them because it's not low enough AP. Yeah, it's got the strength, but it's a low AP. And if you go against something like Militia, yeah, it'll kill them. But, I mean, AP 3 kills them no better than AP 5, so it's such a mediocre weapon. Alright, the Grav Flux Bombars, the next one on the list. This is just a retarded weapon. Okay, brilliant at killing infantry, because the way it forces toughness checks, infantry just die to this thing, it's a low AP. But, against vehicles it rolls 3d6 armor pen. Why is 3d6 important? It's important because 3d6 averages either a 10 or an 11, sort of a 50-50 split on the average roll. So you roll a 10, you can't even hurt a Rhino unless it's in the rear arc. You can glance a land speeder, that's about it. An armor 11, yeah, you're starting to glance Rhinos. Heresy, for those who aren't aware, is full of armor 13, armor 14, and flare shields, which makes a lot of units equivalent of armor 15. or against weapons like this, which fire a template, equivalent armor 16. You are not going to hurt them. You could roll triple sixes, and that's the only way you get through, or maybe 665. That's the only way you're going to do something to a Spartan that's flare shielded. It's not a great weapon. Good at killing infantry, yes, but is it worth the cost of this weapon? No. This weapon's like the cost of half a Dreadnought in its own right. It's ridiculous. The last Leviathan weapon to look at is the Cyclonic Melter Lance. Short-ranged, good at killing vehicles, but at a range where I may as well just run in with the siege drill anyway. So, if it had a lot more shots, maybe. Also, a little gripe I want to point out while I'm here. See on the Dreadnought's sarcophagus on the chest, there's a bunch of like silver canisters either side of the head that run up there. There's 3 on each side, and they've got a little cross pattern to them. Please stop painting those as lights, people. That's the frag assault launchers on the Dreadnought. They're not lights, unless you want to have phosphorus grenades or something, or bioluminescent grenades or something crazy like that. They're not lights, they're grenades. Just public service announcement. Alright, jokes aside, Contemptor Cortis. I picked the Iron Warriors Legion Contemptor for this. I do believe an actual Cortis sculpt has been made, but I haven't seen it. Now the Cortis is like a ramshackle, kit-bashed version of a Contemptor. Sort of like how Mark V power armor is an assorted power armor made from whatever was lying around. Different armor marks, custom jobs, whatever. Well, this is the same sort of thing for regular Contemptors. So it trades away some of the armor, but you can basically supercharge the reactor to get things like rage or better stats. Only a 1 in 6 chance of damaging yourself if you do, so it's generally not a terrible idea. They are dirt cheap. So much so that it sort of competes with the Castaferum, that's the box Dreadnought. Basically, it invalidates even taking the box Dreadnought, unfortunately, because they are so cheap. They're probably too cheap, really, for what they offer. And in Zone Mortalis, the talent of these things can be like 300 points and just cream through an army. Get really nasty unit. But apart from that, it's basically like a regular Contemptor Dreadnought. And of course, last but not least, the Castaferum Dreadnought, the box Dread. Now, in the Heresy, of course, they look more like the Venerable Dreadnought. I love these things as a Mortis Dread. I run them with 2 missile launchers and 2 hunter killers. Because they're a high ballistic skill, they're not cheap, but they're a good price. And the strength 8, very good at taking down aircraft again. I like to do that alpha volley in turn 1, 2 twin-linked missiles and 2 hunter killers from each of my Mortis box Dreads into their flyers. Yeah, most flyers struggle with that. In fact, 2 of these Dreadnoughts almost, didn't quite, but almost killed a Custode Orion on arrival because they got its side arc. So they didn't have to put up with that stupid shield on the front of the thing. Now, weapon options. I can't show them to you because Forge Worlds removed them all thanks to Last Chance to Buy. Now, I'm not saying that you could recast them. I'm not saying that you could go to something like Puppets War or Cromlech and find equivalent weapon options. But you could definitely do that. So, Castaferum Dreadnought, what does it offer? Basically, it's cheaper than the Contemptor, and you get access to 1 or 2 weapons that Contemptors can't take, like a Flamestorm Cannon. But only 1 Flamestorm Cannon, so it's really hard to say the box Dread's good for anything anymore. I made 3 of them for my 1000 Suns, painted them up with like all hieroglyphs and stuff on the chest, and I think they look pretty cool. Armed them with 2 missile launchers each arm, as I said, and hunter killers, and they've performed amazingly in-game. But for the same sort of points, I could have got a Contemptor, and, well, you know, Kiri's assault cannons might have worked better in my favour, or maybe an Arachnus-armed Derideo. It's really hard to sign off on them, because they're way too expensive for what they offer. That's the bottom line. If they were 20 to 30 points cheaper, fully kitted out, yeah, they'd be worth it, but people don't take them. I'm just the one weirdo who seems to take them. Are they worth it? No. but a Contemptor. Always take a Contemptor. Anyway, I'm back with the Outer Circle. I hope this has been a helpful little guide to Dreadnoughts in 30k. It's not too crazy, and I didn't go into every stat, just a rough guide to what each Dreadnought's capable of. Regular Contemptors, they're good all-rounders, but specialise in shooting or specialise in assault. Don't try and do both, because you'll do neither thing well. If you're going to go for a Dreadnought, you have a great support unit at range. Once it gets in close, it loses a lot of its strength, a lot of its viability. Especially if that thing gets into assault, it is screwed, because it is not a combat Dreadnought. Of course, there's the Leviathan Dreadnought, an absolute combat monster, and if its ranged weapons had 12 inches more range on each of them, and it got 4d6 pen for that Grav Bombard, that Dreadnought would be an insane Dakka unit, just pumping out the firepower. But as it stands, it costs so many points to arm it with those shooting weapons, and it takes away from that close combat prowess, which it's best at. I can only recommend it for close combat. And for the Blood Angels players, if you're not running a Leviathan with assault cannon nipples, you're doing it wrong. I think you've even got a custom Leviathan for your Legion. That's how much Forge World wants you to run the things. The Contempted Cortis, if you're cheesy and you play Zone Mortalis, take Contempted Cortis. It's more of a glass cannon version of the Contemptor. It does everything it does just about, but it burns itself out faster doing it, which is perfectly in line with the fluff. It's just a bit cheap on points at the moment, so hopefully that gets fixed, but we'll see. And of course, lastly, the Box Dread. Take this if you want to punish yourself and waste your points. I'm Mac with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching. Hope you got something out of this. Thoughts and feedback below, and if I got anything wrong, please point it out, and I will have to wear it. See you all next time.